On this episode of Parenting and You with me, Dr. Shefali, we are going to deconstruct this whole topic of parental control, which every parent I know struggles with. You know, I have to confess that the topic of control was really a huge topic for me in my early years as a mother. I felt that it was my job to control my child, and I didn't have any other tools besides micromanaging her every move. It was only later, when I began to develop conscious parenting, that I realized that this mindset of control actually was toxic because it had very little to do with my daughter and all to do with me. I soon discovered that it was my inner anxiety, my own inner helplessness that was in the driver's seat of my desire to control. It wasn't my child's behavior, it was my anxiety. And that's what we're going to go deeper into today in this episode. Coming up, I'm going to be speaking with two mothers who are really struggling with how much control they need to have with their children. And I'm looking forward to helping them and you. I can't tell you how many parents come to me in my practice complaining in angst over their children's use of screens. It's almost as if this screen addiction has become a modern epidemic. It is a plague, eroding the connection parents feel they can have with their children. I'm joined today by a mother who is suffering from her child's screen addiction. She is helpless. She doesn't know where to turn. So let's welcome Melina, who's going to be sharing her struggles with her 8-year-old son. Welcome, Melina.
Hello. Thank you, Dr. Shefali. I'm very happy to be here and find better tools to support my son. We are having challenges with video game time. He loves video games. We don't mind that he loves that. What becomes a challenge for us is how he's really managing the anger when we set the limits for him to turn it off the TV or the video game. And so that becomes such a big thing. And I was a preschool teacher, so I have worked with many kids, and I've done the self-regulations with him, like zones of regulations to help him. But it feels like nothing is really helping. I know, I wanted him to be expressive, but I want also him to find tools to control his emotions and me be the support for him as a mother.
So how long has this been going on?
It's been going on a while. Well, we also went through separations. I believe it has been 2 years that start really with the TV and video game.
What do you mean by we've been going through separation?
Between our families, we have separation, their father and I. So we find sometimes the TV, it's kind of a cope mechanism for him.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying that his father and you have been separated for how many years now?
4.
For 4 years. And this problem has been escalating in the past 4 years.
Yes. I would say in the past 2 years, it has escalated. That's when he really start playing video games and watching TV.
Okay. And when you have to now set the limits, say on a Monday or a Tuesday, can you describe the typical scenario? What happens?
Yes, he has such a long day at school. So we get home around 7 p.m. And then after, he needs to do his things before he watches TV or play video games. So let's say if he has an hour and a half of it video game, and then I tell him, we'll have 30 more minutes, and then we're gonna turn it off the TV. Then just to tell him he has 30 more minutes, it's already makes him feel very anxious. And he has been able to say, I don't like when you tell me, because he already feels the emotions. So we have tried to talk what else could I do to help you so you know it's time to turn it off. We have a time limit on the video games and the TV that turns off by, at a certain time. Then when it's past the 30 minutes and it's time to turn it off, he starts screaming and really throwing himself on the floor, or he will kick and just really, really mad and is screaming.
I understand. When you're observing this, what is happening to you? What are you feeling in your body?
So in my body, I feel like that burning sensation that I wish he would stop. Because also, like, I feel for my 13 years old daughter, because she sees all of that and she wants to stop that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes she wants to walk in the situation. I have to remind her, like, I am handling this. I'm his mom. I'll take care of this. But she wants that to stop. She wants him to stop screaming. And I want that as well. So sometimes I'm like, I will say to him, Max, you can be angry, but you were screaming. You need to stop talking to me like that.
Okay, how many times a week are we seeing this?
It happens very often. I would say like it happens 3 times a week, sometimes 2 times a week, and sometimes we can manage that.
Okay, so let me ask, what part of Melina is holding on to a fantasy that today is going to be a different day? Is Melina thinking he's more grown up than he is showing? Is Melina just too exhausted? Melina's hoping because she's too tired?
I think it's Melina hoping because she's tired after like a full day, and I just want the things to go smoothly.
So this little respite she gets when her son is watching TV.
And then also, like, I feel that guilty of like, okay, after a full day of work, I want to have that time with them too. And that we can exchange between us, and like maybe even can try to play a little bit of video game with him so we can make that connection. But that's not really what happens. And that's mother guilt inside of me that our day is short, like our time together is not very long, like it's during the day, I mean, and then that time we have like a argument because of the TV,
right?
Or he is just on the TV and I feel like I did not have that time between us.
You're yearning for a connection, but you're also exhausted, and then you end up just fighting. So is this plan, the way it's continuing now, is it helping your relationship or creating more stress and anxiety? More stress and anxiety, right?
More stress and anxiety, yes.
Correct. So we need something to change, right? That's why you're here today.
Yes.
But like many parents, you too keep hoping that Dr. Shefali or some other person is going to tell you the 3 magic things that will magically change your son, isn't it?
Yes. I don't think I will change him, and I don't really want to change him. I want to find tools to help him, or maybe even help myself.
Beautiful. So if your child could talk in all the fighting, in all the screaming, in all the kicking, if he could really say what he's really feeling, don't you think he would say something like this? Mommy, I'm out of control. Correct? Those are the words, right? He's showing you he's out of control. So each day passes and you're hoping he's going to fall in control. But the story is rinse, repeat, right? The same thing happens. So the child is clear. Mommy, I'm out of control. But mommy keeps thinking that the child will get in control tomorrow. So she does the same thing, the same TV, the same schedule. And again, the child is saying, I'm out of control. So there's a mismatch between what you're seeing and how you're processing it, isn't it?
Yes, big time.
Right. The child is quite consistent, isn't he?
Yes, he is very consistent.
Right. So I want you and parents listening to really stop in their tracks and realize our children are clearly communicating to us. They're clearly telling us when something is or isn't working. Is your child, without even using words, clearly telling you something isn't working for me?
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely.
You are hoping, like all of us parents, that your child will grow into, having an adult brain that will be able to regulate, that will be able to organize, that will be able to shut the dopamine addiction off, right? But your child is clearly saying that he can't. And guess what? Your child is developmentally appropriate. He's not wrong. That brain, that 8-year-old brain, cannot say no to the dopamine addiction that the screens are giving him. So we are putting our children, we're throwing them into a pool of candy and telling them to stop after the first 2 licks. It's like that. You're throwing your child into this ocean of dopamine, of this drug. And then you're saying, oh, time's up. Gotta stop licking. Gotta get up and go on to the next task. And his brain is on dopamine. It's fired up. And you're saying, oh, time to go. Well, like anybody who's addicted to sugar or to a drug, his brain is going into withdrawal and he's screaming for help. So it's not your son you're fighting. It's your own resistance to realizing that his brain cannot take this addiction. Now, what does that mean for you? That'll mean that you have to handle your child without that scapegoat, without that surrogate, without that nanny. So as I say this, what comes up for you right now? You're listening so carefully, so tell me.
It's feels like, all right, take it because he can't handle it. It's not something good for him. But at the same time, if I take it away completely, it's also how good am I doing? It's more about okay, the resistance that I'm having, it's okay, maybe he's having that, take it easy, how you're going to handle in this situation. He's going to have the reaction.
Right.
If you take it away, so what are you going to do?
But I think there's a fear in you to not rely on that. So when your son says, give me the TV, and now you've seen that this is something dangerous for him, this is something negative for him, I sense that you're afraid of entering that parent role, the adult role, and saying, no, this is not good for your brain and body, so I can't give it to you. So take a moment and let's imagine that the day is today that you're going to say no. Just imagine, okay? You're not going to, but let's just imagine. Because you realize that this is dangerous for your son. He cannot handle it. It is eroding your connection. It is destroying your family life. It is a negative influence. It has not been positive, correct? So imagine today is the day you're going to say no. Now tell me what's showing up in your body right now.
Oh, it's okay, here I come. I have to deal with the screaming and all the fighting and all of this. I'm tired.
Exactly.
And I don't know how to do that. So one more day.
I know. So giving that candy, so to speak, giving that TV, let's just call it candy, that's sugar, in the moment when you're tired, it just feels like it's easier in that moment, right? Yes. And you're afraid because in that moment to say no, you're like, I can't handle it. I'm too tired. It just feels easier to give in, doesn't it?
Always feel easier to give in, right?
Yes, but then you have to pay for it in an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Right? So either way,
I'm going to deal any way I have to do.
Exactly.
With the beginning or the end.
Exactly. So you think it's easier to deal with it after giving in because there's this hope in your mind that today he's going to get it right. So he can be happy and mommy can be happy and it's a win-win situation. But it's not happening. This is what happens with us parents, but I think it happens with us humans that our expectations stay stuck as our fantasy, but reality is completely not working out. But instead of realizing, hey, our expectations and reality are fighting with each other, we instead keep on trying to match it, but it's not matching. And in fact, the distance between your expectations and reality are just growing wider and wider. And that gap is your suffering. So you have only 2 choices. All of us as humans only have 2 choices. Either change the expectation, meaning expect that we're just going to fight. So then there's no problem. Okay. Or we change our reality. And that's what I'm asking you to do here. You have to change the reality because you're not changing the expectation, because the expectation is that he becomes an adult, right? With an adult brain. Well, he can't do that. So you have to drop the expectation. And that reality is, in my opinion, that's where your resistance is. And I think you're really afraid of dealing with him. And yes, for the first few days, he'll be clinging to you or he'll be asking for your attention. But eventually, it will change with your connection. But I think you've gotten so used to relying on the TV as your nanny that you're afraid to show up as you are, and be there and you be present and take your child back. Right now, the screens have your child abducted, and it's almost like you have to take your child back from the screens. And that is causing you some stress, some fear, some resistance. What would it mean for Melina to be in a screen-free house for a few weeks and really show up for her kid? And that is the challenge.
That's a big challenge because I feel like when we have to know screen time and they have to find other things to play with, it feels like they don't know what to do anymore. And they used to be so playful. And it's something funny because I always was very involved on their activities and playing with them, but they were also able to do things, create things. And now I feel they say they are bored all the time. And I'm at some point I wanted to take that word away. I wanted to tell them, we don't say that word anymore.
Okay, so here's the thing. You said it. This is it. Why are you upset when they use the word bored? Because when they are bored, Melina gets anxious, doesn't she?
Yeah, oh, yes.
They can use the word bored. Bored is as good a word as cold and hot and up and down. It's just a word. But their boredom, and this is not just you, it's most parents, when our children are bored, the fixer in us, the anxious fixer in us, the people pleaser in us feels like, oh, okay, I better entertain them. I better find something to do. But you're so busy. So then you have to put on the entertainment, you see, and your children know that. They know, as most children, if I just say I'm bored over 25 times, my mother will crumble because we know she's busy. And we just know that that's her hot button, that's her trigger. And we'll act really whiny, complaining and bored. And she's going to panic because she's so sweet. She wants to fix our boredom. See, you even tell them, don't use the word boredom. They know it's your trigger.
So the fixer, when they said, I'm bored, and I feel oh, okay, I have to do something because I have done outside of the house. So I have to do it inside of the house.
Yes, that guilt eats you up. But here's the cycle, the toxic cycle that we get on because of guilt, right? Plus the separation, right? That creates mother guilt. Then mommy's working all day. That creates mommy guilt. Then mommy's tired. That creates mommy guilt. And then when we see our children unhappy, the pleaser in you, out of all that guilt, just wants to give them the candy. You want them to be happy. But you see, it's actually causing more dysfunction. So we have to somehow manage our guilt. And that's big. And I'll give that to you. Every working mother has that. But the answer to mommy guilt is not feeding them the candy, because that creates this other dysfunctional cycle. Then they're fighting with you. You're fighting with them. Then there's more guilt. So we have to break this cycle. And this cycle is coming from your guilt. So the answer really is for you to find a way to realize that your presence, your being there for them without fixing, without giving them perfection and candy, is the answer to your mommy guilt. They need mommy just present, showing up. And we as parents, because we're so guilty, we want to give them presents and the TV and the trinkets and the baubles and the jewelry. But all they want is mommy to sit on the floor with them for 20, 30 minutes and play. So this is the time. Your child is saying, mommy, help me. I don't like this cycle. Your 13-year-old is saying, can you please stop getting on this roller coaster every single day? So it's time for Melina to watch how her mommy guilt is feeding this extra indulgence of candy, and it's causing this toxic cycle. So I hope this helps. Today, when your child comes home, instead of giving him the candy, giving in, sit with that guilt, soothe that inner guilt, and realize that your child doesn't need your guilt. Your child needs your presence.
Yeah, makes sense.
I think your child knows that you are very anxious when he has big emotions or is bored or is whining or complaining. And he knows that that's his way now to manipulate you. That's his way to get what he needs. He's not doing it in a conscious way, but that's what he's understood from you, that the minute I show a lot of emotions, mommy's going to get really anxious and feel really guilty. And then tomorrow she'll give it back to me because she feels really bad that she fought with me. You see, so this cycle is feeding on itself and it has to break by you. Nobody else can break the cycle but you. He's doing what he should do, which is being himself, being who he needs to be to get his needs met. How is mommy showing up differently? So that's what you need to practice. And it's going to take time and he's going to resist and he's going to test you. But this is where your boundaries come into play and your anxiety needs to be checked so that you don't give in. So try it for a week where you show up in a different way and break the cycle. But thank you so much. I hope this has helped you a little bit to break out of the cycle that you're in.
Thank you very much. I will really show up different, make some change that can be helpful for our family.
Wonderful, Melina. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Mommy guilt. So many of us mothers, especially us working mothers, have felt that, haven't we? Where we feel so guilty because we aren't making our children happy. You see, we parents fall into this trap that at every moment we need to entertain our children or give them what they want. God forbid they complain or they whine or they're bored. Boredom just feels so unimaginably anxiety-provoking for us. But here's the thing, and I say this to all parents, we are not here to micromanage every mood and feeling our children have. And in fact, it's really quite healthy for our children to experience frustration, to experience boredom, and to find a way to resource themselves into their next actualization. They can find their own way out of their boredom, out of their unhappiness. And by us not stepping in, we actually allow them to have the practice to do so. Coming up next, I'm going to talk to a mother who's really struggling with her 11-year-old daughter and is trying to find a way to better connect with her. I think one of the hardest things about the parenting journey is when we are unable to connect to our children. It's every parent's fantasy to have a deep, emotionally attuned, connected bond with our children. And we keep hoping that this bond will strengthen. But sometimes, as they become teenagers especially, actually this bond weakens and it causes us so much anguish and pain. I am now joined by Shiloh, who's experiencing this pain. She's experiencing the frustration and the disconnection that we parents sometimes feel and all the helplessness that comes with it. So welcome, Shiloh. I know you're here to talk about your struggles with your 11-year-old daughter.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Shefali. What I've been experiencing is as she gets older and she's sort of struggling to be her own person more now, right? And she and I have been quite close because it's been just the two of us in the house for 5 years, 6 years, 7 nights a week. And we for the most part, we get along quite well. But when it comes down to just the things that I'm sure so many parents experience, just making sure she brushes her teeth and picks up after herself and takes a shower, all of those things that she needs to kind of really become more independent on, she's struggling with that. And I struggle with part of it is that even though her father has been out of the house for so long, it was a very difficult relationship. And I have also been having to work on sort of healing myself from that. What I'm finding is I get overwhelmed. So I get short. My temper gets short. She struggles with that. Her dad gets angry very quickly. If you yell or get very stern with her, she can shut down. She can cry. She has a reaction to that as well. So I'm really trying to find that balance between taking care of myself enough so that I can approach her in a way that works for her so that we can get her to be able to do what both of us need her to do.
Yes. So first, let me just, validate that this must be so hard for you. You're almost a single parent with the bulk of the burden of taking care of a child. And I want all single parents out there listening to realize that you're carrying a lot. It is such a burden to raise a child on one's own. And you're doing it. So I can only imagine the burden you feel and the stress you feel. And then when things don't go well or she's not progressing, I'm sure that brings up a lot of feelings in you. So let's go there. When you observe and witness that, oh my goodness, she didn't brush her teeth again. And oh goodness, she's not doing her homework. Or what feelings come up in you as her mother?
There's a variety. I get frustrated because partly I want to do the dishes and not tell her to brush her teeth. All right. I want to do something that I have to take care of instead of trying to help her with what she needs when I want her to be doing it on her own. I also feel resentment sometimes, even though that's a constant something I'm working on because I am doing it on my own and there's nobody there to back me up or, I can't say, can you go help her while she brushes her teeth while I'm packing lunch for tomorrow or something, so there's that part of it. And then there's just the exhaustion part. Like, we talked about this yesterday and the day before and the day before and the day before. I'm tired of it.
Yeah, you're exhausted.
I feel guilty for having all of those feelings.
So talk about that guilt a little bit.
In my head and in my heart, I have a good idea of what it takes to be a decent parent. Certainly not a perfect parent, but a decent parent. Sure. I understand what she needs. I understand what I should be doing. But sometimes I'm just at that point where I don't want to. I think maybe I'm the child in me sort of is coming out and I'm like, I want to throw a temper tantrum right now, but I have to be the adult and give you what you need. And so I feel bad. I want her to have everything she needs to be a successful human. And I know when I'm not giving it to her.
Sure. So it's this cycle, right? You're so busy, you give her instructions, she, typically doesn't follow them, you lose your temper, then you feel guilty, and it starts again, right? And this is the cycle, and you don't know how to get off it.
I tell myself I think I have ideas, but I have to have the energy and the patience. I have to be ready to put those ideas into place.
Yes. For most parents, but especially I can imagine for single parents, the burden to create this responsible, competent, almost near perfect adult. You're raising this child who you hope will grow up and be successful and achieve great things. Is all that burden is on you. So I can only imagine how you have this checklist of things that you want her to do every day, and you're trying to make it all work. And here's the thing. We think that that's what our children need from us. But in essence, that is the furthest thing they need from us. They need something completely different. Can you guess what that could be? What do you think she's really wanting to get from you that she's not getting?
I think just me and that connection.
Yeah. So how do you think she's not getting you?
Because I am so busy trying to take care of other things. I guess when I get frustrated, I'm not connected to anybody, right? I'm kind of in this other space where I'm just trying to survive and get through it and make her do what I want her to do.
So if mommy is in survival mode, if mommy is exhausted, if mommy is not being taken care of, mommy's burning with resentment, then how do we expect our daughter to be any different, right? Our children begin to vibe off our energies. They absorb our anxieties, our stress. So here's mommy, trying her best, but obviously at the edge of her sanity, really, holding on tight to her good humor, to her good spirits, but it's tough and the daughter can see that. And then mommy puts all this burden on herself and on the daughter that, hey, I've got to fix you. I've got to make you kind of perfect because it's just the two of us in this world. So everything will fall on me. So you better launch fast, right? And on top of that, the daughter has also experienced a lot of upheaval in your home, right? You've separated from your partner. You're working all the time. The father doesn't see her as much. And then, as you said, loses his temper on her. So here's a child who is kind of a little bit Swiss cheesy, right? A lot of holes now. And she's obviously showing you that it's really hard for her to regulate her feelings.
Yes, it is. That is true for her in many situations.
Yeah. So give me a typical stressful evening. How does it go? Just quickly illuminate it for us.
It's usually towards the end of the night. We've had supper. She's had some downtime. It's time to sort of wrap things up, and she needs to, stop what she's doing. She needs to, stop this show she's watching, or if she's talking with a friend on the phone or something, she needs to stop doing that. And I'll give her a warning. You've got 10 minutes, you've got 5 minutes. And then I might say, like, I have to go clean the litter box. And I try to leave her to stop what she's doing and move on to the next thing. But it's just like, I can count on her to not do that.
Right. So let's stop there for a second. So is she predictable?
Pretty predictable. Yeah.
Right. Is she consistent?
Yes, I would say so.
Right. Isn't that amazing? I always tell parents, our children are so clear. They are predictable and they are consistent. But guess what? So are we. We're doing the same thing each and every day, expecting different results, right? We are that saying, trying the same thing and expecting a different result, but doing the exact same thing every single day. So that's the definition of insanity. Not that you're insane, but that's just the saying. So here's where parents need to do it differently. We need to ask ourselves, okay, this is the predictable cycle. This is the loop. We are on rinse, repeat. Who is going to make the change here? Is it going to be the child or is it going to be me? And each day we expect our child to change. Yet we don't make the change that we need to see in the house. So what is something that you need to do differently that you've never done before? At least let's do a new pattern rather than the same pattern.
I think that's where I get hung up. I tell myself that maybe if I won't go do the litter box, I'll stay and make sure that she's done what she needs to do. Or, if you were not going to shut the TV off, I'll do it for you kind of thing. But at 11 years old, I don't want to be doing that. I want her to shut the TV off.
See, you're still stuck in the level of doing, right? Doing. Is it I who's going to do or is it she who's going to do? But if we stay stuck there, we're still in a power struggle. So let me help you here. So in order to shift the dynamic, we need to shift away from the instructions, the commands, the doing, because that hasn't worked. And we need to shift gears into a different place. And that gear change is to a place of connection. So what would that look like for you? It's the end of the night. You're tired. She's tired. She's watching a TV program. She's all snuggled up on the couch. And now, here's the moment of reckoning, right? We have two choices. The one is the old way. Mommy comes in and says, turn the TV off, time for bed. And this is the start of that downward spiral. Or we can do something completely different. Like, we can join her on the couch. We can snuggle with her. We can ask her a few questions. We can engage with her for a few minutes and use that time to bond, to connect, to soothe, to massage, to touch, to gently begin to wind down. And then when you've bonded and giggled and laughed and told a story and yawned and hugged her and stroked her hair, don't you think she'll be a little bit more open to continuing the same in her bed? Right? And you can gently take her to her bed, soothingly tuck her in, and give her what every child wants the most, which is the presence of a safe, soothing parent.
That's definitely something I've noticed, is that if we've had time together, then she is quicker to do what she needs to do. And, kind of does it even without my asking sometimes because we've had that time together.
Beautiful. So you've observed the power of connection. So now my next question, which is really an important one for you to answer, is if you've seen that works and control doesn't work, what stops you from putting in that effort at the front end to give the connection rather than give all your energy and be exhausted at the back end when control doesn't work?
It makes so much sense when you say it that way. I think it's just so easy to get caught up in everything that I'm trying to do.
Exactly. I mean, you are no different than I have been and no different than most parents. We get so caught up in the doing of parenting and the doing of life that we miss that children do not operate well in too much doing. Children are still in their being state. They need connection. They need soothing. They need safety. They need to be seen. And we think, she's 11, come on. How much do you want me to see you? And you're so consumed with your own need to be seen. You're exhausted. You just want to get to bed. So your goal is get to bed. Well, what you're missing is her goal. Her inner need is to be connected with. And until that bucket gets filled, the children will make us pay a price. I always tell parents, you can either pay the price at the front end or at the back end. So decide which end you want to pay it. But if you pay the price at the front end and connect with your children at the start, you will get the prize of their cooperation, of their connection, of the ease of attuning with each other. And that's what you're missing. And ultimately, of course, you know this, it comes down to you healing from this resentment and guilt you have, because that's really at the source of your fatigue and your stress, this underlying resentment and guilt.
Yes, I think that is a big part of it. But there's a question of, finding the time to do that as well, which I'm sure, I know I'm not alone in this.
When we talk about healing the inner self, it's not necessarily carving out an hour a day to do that. It's really a shift in your consciousness to realize that actually much of the busy work you're doing is distracting you from being with yourself. You're actually perpetuating your own busyness, and therefore you have more resentment, and therefore you have more guilt. It's not finding more time and putting that on the checklist now, like, find time to heal from resentment and guilt. No, it's really realizing that you have been distracting yourself from your own connection to you. The dishes are not important. The bed can be unmade. The food can be, ordered in. It's mommy coming back to herself. So as I said that, I noticed you got a little emotional. So what came up for you?
I think actually in my head, I was trying to imagine doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's the part of me that knows that's true, but in my head, all of a sudden the sink was overflowing and I don't have money to order in, so I won't be doing that. I guess that resistance even to saying that I can do it better. I'm already doing all I can, but I'm not.
Right. So here the invitation has come to you that, Shiloh, you need to connect to yourself more so that you have more to give your child. And look at your mind. It came roaring down with this resentment saying, no, I have no time to give to myself. I have the dishes. She doesn't understand. These are the stories we tell ourselves to keep ourselves away from being present to ourselves. It is not true you don't have money for a bagel. It's not true that your child needs fancy meals cooked by you. It's not true that the dishes need to be cleaned every night if you're exhausted. What is true is that you are hungry for a connection to yourself. And your daughter is reminding you to do that, to connect to yourself. She's saying, Mommy, I'm hungry and I need you to show up for me connected to yourself. And when you do, you will fill me up.
Yes. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Many of us parents get afraid to stop the doing and enter being, because for so long we've been trying to be in control. And we're trying to control our children, we're trying to control our exes, our marriages, and we're trying to control the future. But the greatest gift your child needs, your daughter needs from you, is the gift of your presence in the here and now, in this present moment. So if you can remember that, then that is how you fill your day. How can I give her my presence? And that'll just completely revolutionize your entire relationship. Well, thank you so much for sharing, Shiloh.
Yes, and thank you for your time, Dr. Shefali. It was a real treat to get to hear your perspective.
So in both these sessions, we saw two overworked mothers, single, raising their children, carrying all the burdens of parenting on their own. This is such a common predicament for so many parents out there. And it's quite typical that these parents fall into the habit of doing. They believe that if they don't fix and micromanage and produce and puppeteer every mood, emotion, thought, and behavior of their children will fall apart, and that means they will have failed at being good parents. Here's what I want to tell all parents. Our children need less of our instructions, our fixing, our control, and our micromanagement. Our children instead need us to show up present, able to attune to them, and ready to reflect their inherent essence. Every child, like every human, longs to be seen, to be heard, and to be understood as worthy. Let's give this to our children. If this has been helpful to you, don't forget to subscribe and share this with your friends and family. And I will see you next time on Parenting and You with me, Dr. Shefali. Parenting and You with Dr. Shefali is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute for professional medical, psychological, psychotherapeutic, coaching, healthcare, or other qualified professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment.